Hello and welcome to Facebook Live earlier than our usual time. So if you are watching later or you've come in late and are watching past, I'm sorry for the earlier time. We're going to be starting 2 o'clock at 2 o'clock for the next several weeks because my daughter Serenity has a running club and Chuck would like to be there to volunteer with her running club. And to get there, I have to be done earlier so he can get there so I can get upstairs to go to the bus for the other kids and to be with Elijah. So Serenity's very excited. She has about 6 to 8 weeks of running club. And we have a few questions today. I should also, if you are out there, have time to answer any questions that you bring in because we don't have that many. So let's get started with our regular business first. I'm going live in 3 places. I'm going live on YouTube and I'm going live on Facebook in a private group where your comments are safe, and I'm going live in a public business page. And if you're watching on the public business page, your friends can see your comments and they may get notifications. So they're not private, but you may not know which page you're in. So I'm going to go into each page and put in the comments which page you are on. So give me a moment to do that. That way I can also refresh my screen on my regular laptop and see that it's working. So let's just get that. And in this comment, I also put a link to Understanding Midlife Crisis, my free course, which is a great course for you to enroll in, especially if as a newbie, because it answers a lot of your newbie questions, and it's meant to get you through the whys, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't mean it's going to make sense because it's not logical. But once you understand that it's not logical and you apply that to it, you can start to get some understanding, and it can help you release those whys so you can get to what's more important, which is your own healing. So let's see, I've got the public business page. I'm going to refresh my screen and see if I'm coming in. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to head over to the private group. And give me just a moment. Okay, not seeing myself yet. I always wonder how, when I go to groups where I'm looking for a Facebook Live, I go in the group and I'm always nervous that I'm not going to miss it because I just can't find them. So okay, I just went, okay, that's the wrong one. I thought oh, that's weird. Maybe hold on a second. This is, I put I must be in the, oh, never mind. You can't figure out. It looks like I'm in the public page twice, but then the comment that I just put on the public page is coming through. So I'm going to delete that comment and bring it back. There. So it looks almost the same. It just says you're in the private group. And let me double check. I don't know how that happened because I didn't push cut and paste. And yet suddenly it was there. Okay. So hold on, we've already got a few comments up there. So I'm going to go look at them. I can read them up on my camera or I can read them over here. Actually, I can't see them up here. Okay, no, we're going to take that one down, and apparently it isn't coming through to you guys because it's one of those spam ones. So that's good. I mean, not good, but... So our first question, and if I use a name, it is because I have been given permission. The form that you fill out does ask for permission, and so I will keep you anonymous when I don't have that permission. So we have an anonymous left behind spouse, female left behind spouse. Bomb drop was January of 2020 and marriage 2005. She has a high energy replayer who is a boomerang. And she says, my husband has introduced the alienator to our friends and possibly to family. And they seem to be accepting of the situation, which is incredibly painful. Is this normal? We also have 3 daughters. Our eldest is 25, and the youngest is 16. So between the ages of 16 and 25. I also worry how this might affect them. How should I handle this? Okay, first, there's 2 things that you're asking when you ask, is this normal? I don't know which one you intended to be asking, or you may have been asking both. Is it normal for an MLCer to go and introduce the alienator to friends and or family? Or are you asking, was it normal for them to seem accepting of the situation? Now, first thing, yes, it's normal from on both parts. And let's explain that a little bit. We have some MLCers who hide the affair. We have some MLCers who hide the divorce for a few years even. They just don't tell anyone they're divorced. And it's known by the left behind spouse. Of course it is, because that's how I get the information. And it's a spoken rule. I don't want anyone to know. Well, usually that is a boomerang or clinging boomerang. A vanisher probably wouldn't do that. But why are they hiding it? Obviously, they don't really want it. It's not just about shame. They are afraid of backlash from people, but they really don't want it, but they don't know, and they don't know how to fix things. So there's a bit of that. Now, that's not the norm. The norm is, yeah, they want to introduce the other person. Now, why? There's a few reasons. First thing, there's the pressure of the alienator. If you're dating somebody, don't you want to be introduced to their friends? Don't you want to be introduced to their family? If they are not allowing that, what does that mean to you? Are you ashamed of me? This isn't real. This is just a convenient relationship. We know the relationship is real when you decide to let your friends know. So we all know that. So an alienator already knows there's a wife or a husband on the other side, and that you're a threat. Even if you weren't standing and they didn't know it, or it doesn't mean anything to them, just your memory can be a threat, especially with a clinging boomerang. If you have a boomerang or a clinging, especially clinging, they keep going back to you. They might keep talking about you. The conflict in the affair is due to you, your presence, your existence, the fact that their relationship began as an illicit relationship, and it may still very well be an ongoing affair if it's in the early stages. I'm not saying it's not later, but in the beginning, where they haven't had time together, they're even more scared. That alienator is an interloper. They are in there destroying a marriage, and this person has stronger pulls, like their kids, the kids who are angry at them for having an affair with them. So that alienator really wants to establish themselves as a legitimate and solid and real relationship. They want to show the possession. So that would be why. So it could be an emotional blackmail thing where they have been pressured. An MLC has been pressured. In my situation with Chuck, let's see, it started out, I don't want to say really an emotional affair. It was not yet physical, but planning to. That was the intention. So it wasn't one of those emotional affairs where they didn't know that they were getting too close. They planned it. He moved out, and he got an apartment, and he was in an apartment for a few weeks before he finally moved in with her. But it was once that happened, once their relationship was physical, then they were living together. That was it. And within a few days or weeks, it was within either 3 days or 2 weeks, he introduced her to the family. And I'm pretty sure she was very insistent on this. I think they had a family outing. They had, I don't know if it was that wasn't the birthday time, because it was June. But there was some sort of a family event where everyone was there. And so he was going to his family's. It wasn't like she said, we have to create a reason. And he brought her along. And I from my understanding, I think they were surprised. So right there, that means she insisted. And I know the patterns of that relationship and that affair, she would have done that. She would have insisted. There was a lot of emotional blackmail. And while she was there, I think it was this time, unless it was the next time, she was wearing an engagement ring. Now, Chuck later said, oh yeah, she put that on. It was her grandmother's, but she said it was an engagement ring. She was wearing it as an engagement ring, and she said they were engaged to his family. And let's see, bomb drop was March, the end of March. This was June. he had moved out the first weekend of May. So, and he was gone for 1 month, and then this is about 5 weeks after he had actually physically left the house. Now he would have left earlier, but the apartment wasn't ready. So the end of March to the beginning of June, and now he is sitting in his parents' house with his young nieces and nephews. And let's see, Kara was, the oldest was 8 or 9 at that point, and the younger ones were, the boys were 5, almost 6. They were turned 6 the next year. So little children, because, and I talk about this because they then got confused later on when I was there. And then suddenly she was there again. And that's the next year his family put a stop to all of this, to her being at places, because of the confusion for the children. Now, what is his family to do? They're polite people. They're not the greatest as in-laws, but they're polite. And their son walks in with a woman. Their married son walks in with a woman who's not his wife. And they knew. It had been announced that there was somebody else. So he wasn't hiding it. But what do? You've got the children there. So you said they seem accepting of the situation. Yeah, that's called being polite. You don't know what to do, and you're just like, oh, hello, oh my God, look at that. So, and my sister-in-law said, well, she seemed nice. But of course, you're on your best behavior. The alienator will be too. Of course she's going to seem nice. Why shouldn't she? And not only that, imagine how you are in the beginning of any relationship anyway. You're on that good behavior. We're not going to argue thing. We're trying to make this work. You know, I don't know if this is the right guy, but I'm not going to, start screaming at him. So you're on that. I call it interview mode for when I'm interviewing for jobs. You're in your professional mode. So, yeah. Now, the other thing is sometimes they are accepting of it for not that polite reason. They don't know. First thing, they've heard one side. They don't want to alienate the family member or the friend. They want to be supportive of a friend. Sometimes people they don't want to get involved. I love and hate that because I feel the same way. And the reason I feel that way is doing what I do, I feel guilty when I say that. I feel like sometimes it's not that I don't want to be involved. I'm terribly curious. And so I don't, when somebody seems to be having an issue. But first thing, I'm such an introvert that we don't have a lot of super, super close friends. So I haven't seen it a lot. But a few years ago, it was one of my friends in my foster parent group. They, to my best of knowledge, haven't gone through anything. But she started talking about, they have their own business, and her husband, he's getting really close to this new secretary or person. And, oh, my alert went on. Okay, what is this about? And I could tell she just didn't want to. So you have to look as your friend, if you're involved, do they really want you to be involved or not? And many of them do, but we don't know how to approach that. And because we don't know how, we stay back, and it seems like we are accepting or we are approving of a situation when we're really not. I didn't want Chuck's family to be so disapproving that it was overt and that they were, okay, let's not use the word, that they were rejecting him. I didn't want him to feel rejected by his friends or his family because he was already feeling that. That was part of his midlife crisis. He had felt neglected by me, and he wasn't wrong. That was my marital sin. And so I didn't want that. I talked to a very good friend about it, of his. This was a female friend. And we talked, and I said, he's going to call you. He's going to call you, and you just need to listen without being judgmental. Just be his friend and just listen. And she reported back to me a few months later that he did exactly that. She said, sometimes I lost it though. I lost it on him. But you're right. He did exactly. He called her and he just confided. And she said she did her best. And his parents, they welcomed him into their home because that's their son. I didn't want that. So we want to look at how families are responding, and rather than make assumptions about what it is. There are going to be some families that are like, yeah, come on in. We know it's fine. Divorce happens. There are those. And there are those that don't have the same level of boundaries anyways. They're much more fluid and accepting of multiple relationships, let's just say. And like, oh yeah, that one's gone, this one's in. Hopefully you knew that about the family before that. And it's always going to be shocking. You feel it's incredibly painful, but we don't know why. We don't know how uncomfortable they are with this situation. And many of them are very uncomfortable as well. And the ones that aren't are like, it happens. You just really need to accept it. Divorce happens and he just doesn't love you anymore. And I roll. You don't need to, engage with that. That's what our culture says. Okay, let's move forward with number 2. Another anonymous female left behind spouse. Date of marriage or bomb drop was May of 2019. Date of marriage was 1993. Now, high energy replayer, contact type says vanisher. Now, we know that this is not a vanisher. We'll go over this a little bit. Okay, looking back at your history, I think last time you said boomerang, and the last few times before that you said clinging boomerang, and based on the question here, clinging boomerang. So what is happening here, I think, with labeling as a vanisher is one of the confusions we have. Suddenly contact reduces, contact goes away, and we think ours is a vanisher now. But that's not necessarily. You need to look at the dynamics of what is going on in your situation now. This could just be a simple withdrawal. And when I say the term withdrawal, I am not talking about the stage that Jim Conway has called withdrawal. I don't recognize that stage. I don't recognize it as that at all. So I don't use withdrawal in that way. But there are pursuit and distance dances. And this could be part of the distance. This could be a withdrawal when you had really good interactions and they got scared. And sometimes that's a withdrawal for a day with a clinging boomerang. But sometimes it's a withdrawal for a few months. We just don't know. And sometimes it's the alienator. So let's look at this for a minute and keep that in mind. 3 years, and he seems to be going backwards. I've seen a change in him since September of 2021. He was more himself and the anger had dissipated. Now, as a side note, on a previous time, she'd noted there was a false return in February of 2021, I believe it was, because it was, I think that when I was reading that one, it was submission, it was earlier this year, okay? So just that when you have these patterns of false returns, you're dealing with a clinging boomerang probably. So now we're back to there was a change in September 21. He was anger. The anger had dissipated. The alienator was gone, and we were reconnecting. He expressed that he wanted us to attend marriage counseling. Awesome. Early in November 2021, I was on my way to meet him for coffee when he rang. This one's tough. Telling me his older brother, who was 67, had died by suicide. And I am, oh my God, so sorry. Total shutdown. Yeah. Total shutdown of somebody who wasn't already in a midlife crisis. Total trigger for somebody to go into a midlife crisis. I mean, my heart just goes out for him. Total shutdown, and within days of his brother's burial, the alienator was back, and he moved back in with her again. Not really surprising. We always wonder, will a crisis bring them out? And you have the answer right here. If they aren't ready. If they aren't ready, absolutely not. Crisis isn't going to bring them out. And if they aren't ready, and it seems like it really did, and it lasts, I would be very concerned about it being one of those instances where they were yanked out the front and we'll have a worse crisis again in a few more years. He had been, before this, he went back to the alienators, but he had been at his mother's house. He's gone full on, no contact. And if I do contact him, he usually, now there's a usually, doesn't respond. So if it was he doesn't respond, and that had been the full pattern before that, that'd be vanisher. If he usually responds, but sometimes he hasn't, you aren't in a vanisher at all anyways, because you've had communication with him since November. But look at his reason for going into his hidey hole. The last message I got, so there was a message, which means not a vanisher. Now, without the previous history, we would say, okay, this does look like it could be a distant contact. I'm not going to apply that here. But the last message I got for him was 4 weeks ago when he said that we would talk. He's just not there yet. There's too much in his head. I want you to take that and I want you to believe in it. That is so authentic. He says he's just not there. But he is trying to give you a reassurance. Really, he really is. We'll talk. He just can't do it. And remember, his brother didn't just die. I mean, somebody who's 67, these days, the average age is lifespan is 79. I just read that the other day. I was so disappointed because I know it was 82 at one point, but I think that was for women. So I was rather disappointed. Sorry, no, I don't know. Gosh. So 67, unfortunately, we do see 67-year-olds die of all sorts of causes, but suicide, no. That's the one we don't expect, isn't it? And so his shock isn't just at that his brother died. It's how he died. How do I navigate this? I worry, is this the way it's going to be? That he'll seek her out every time life gets tough. Right now, yeah. But no. Remember what I said. A crisis will not bring them out unless they're ready. They can sit at that exit to the tunnel. They'll sit on this side of the exit for a day or years. Years. They're really ready. They can see it. Taking this step. And if they're that close, then yes, a crisis could push them out of the tunnel. But we can have crisis after crisis after crisis inside the tunnel, in the middle of it, and it just sends them down. There is not a rock bottom because there's always a way to keep digging. Don't, down, deeper and deeper. We keep thinking, how can it get worse than this? How could they get worse? They can. They really can. And it is that saying about God won't give you more than you can handle. It's a lie. It really is. God, we sometimes there has been more than we have been able to handle, than some people can handle. Okay. And that's when they avoid. He's not handling it. His mom is elderly. If she has had a 67-year-old son, yes, she would be. And is going to die soon. So I just don't know how I can invest the time. Please help. Your knowledge and insight is all that's keeping me going. I want you to work on yourself and focus on being the lighthouse because he wants you to and because it's what's best for you. So when I say be the lighthouse, forget about whether he notices or not. He is. I'm looking at this and he is. But be the lighthouse for you. Be that mirror that when you look at that person in that mirror and like, that is who I want to be. I want to be that person. And oh my God, that person is me. I want you to work on that. When you says, how can I invest the time? When we invest the time as standers, standing is the lonely part. That's the part where we do this without our spouses going. Once you get to reconciliation, officially rebuilding, then you go together. But standing is lonely. You're doing it alone. And so the time you're investing isn't in your marriage or in him. It's in you. And an investment in you is an investment in him. Think about how much more stable a parent a person is when they are stable emotionally. Same thing as a spouse. So the time I want you investing is in you. And that means that you can still communicate with him, but you don't have to. But it doesn't mean you cut him off. It just means you focus on you. You heal you. You embrace your own life. And when he starts to do his reconnecting dance, be there, listen, validate. Listen to the complaints if he has them about you, about how things were, how he's afraid. And be reassuring and show appreciation for him. Show praises for him. you know what? I believe in you. I'm so sorry this happened to your brother. And it hurt me too. Don't criticize him if you ever not that you were, but you know, he was my brother-in-law and I miss him. And you weren't thinking of, don't do that sort of thing. Okay. Hey, I loved him too. I'm sad. It hurt me. It shocked me. Because that just comes off as critical. Show the empathy so that through your actions, he can see that you also were shocked and hurt and possibly grief-stricken by this news. But it's his brother and he's shocked and he's in a crisis already. So he was already very vulnerable. You navigate it though by not saying, how do I navigate this with my husband? It's how do you navigate with it with yourself? The same way you navigate the rest of the crisis. And you work on the empathy. I want you to be rooted in empathy. And that doesn't have to have anything to do with our spouses, because I want you all to be rooted in empathy anyway. The things that I want you to be those way. Grace, empathetic, agape. I want you to be those anyway. That's why I say love anyway. That's why my blog is called Love Anyway. You love anyway. Somebody hates you, love them anyway. That doesn't mean that you stand for it and allow it, and there aren't consequences and boundaries, but love. You love anyway. And you love any way you can. Sometimes you love through boundaries. Sometimes your love is tough. Okay? Let's move on. We have an anonymous male left behind spouse. His bomb drop was February of 2020 and date of marriage is 2011. He has a boomerang who is a high energy replayer. He says, I started the divorce with which my wife knew I was going to do because I told her a week before I filed. She saw that I started it and she wasn't happy. She started saying I couldn't wait and it's just about you. She started saying that I couldn't wait and it's just me that I'm being controlling again, even though she wanted this multiple times. She then reeled off loads of other controlling things she hasn't mentioned since bomb drop. Crying and monster were all mixed in. I told her that I'm sorry she felt this way and her feelings are valid, but I am not controlling. So in that place, I want you to validate everything she says without adding, but I am not controlling. So first thing, for a few reasons. Number one, when we say but, the comma but, we're saying, okay, I'm going to tell you all this stuff, and now, comma but, ignore everything I just said. Erase all the stuff I just said because I'm about to say something that's the opposite. And that's what I really mean. So what I think sometimes when we validate, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Sometimes it will come through. And I'm sorry you feel that way is one validation. And it can get a broken record. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't use that one. It depends on your tone at that time. But sometimes it can come through that we're not agreeing that you were controlling when you validate them. You're just acknowledging a person's feelings. And sometimes it can be clear that you don't agree with it. You not even have to say you disagree. And your feelings, or your actions, can be showing that you are not controlling. And maybe you were controlling, maybe you weren't, but if we're not controlling now, we look back on history. Show that you are not controlling instead of telling. So when you said, but I am not controlling, and I've done it too. And there are times when it's, you're telling. Show versus tell, though, in this. Okay? I like that you were validating her feelings. She talked about the kids, and I affirmed that she's a good mom. She said she married me as she loved me, but has been unhappy since our 9-year-old was born. We had kids after this, and she wanted more, so it makes no sense. And why kick off the divorce when she wanted it and is with the alienator? Does she really want it? Is she facing it? Is you doing it, making it a reality to her, and she's upset at the reality? and that she's now faced with more consequences from her behaviors, and so that just makes her mad. You know, what we want to do when I talk about MLC not being logical. Sometimes we're looking at ourselves and watching our behavior, MLC or others, and realizing, the freak, who's that crazy person in my body not acting logically? We know we're not being logical sometimes. But we can also explain it and draw the lines to suddenly how, in the context of that person, it is logical. She's angry. She's ashamed. She's upset. Maybe this could be the first time she really realized, oh my God, it's actually happening. I'm scared now. I'm scared now. What do we do when we're scared? What does a wounded and trapped animal do? Well, they certainly seem pretty darn angry, don't they? So they lash out. Yeah, she's with the alienator. Is that really a good relationship, a valid relationship, whether it seems that or not? Look at all the conflict that comes because there's a real spouse on the other end. So typically, affairs are not stable, healthy relationships. Yeah, they say, oh, this is my soulmate and all this, and limerence wins, right? And it does. Trust me, limerence wins it now. But she's also starting to feel the pain of it when she sees that divorce thing. That paper is real. I mean, it's just paper, but that's real. And some think there's no going back now. There is. You can remarry somebody, but it is a psychological line in the sand. And some people won't jump it, or they're afraid of it. Or they know that it's your line in the sand. We get the divorce. If you finalize that, we're done. So her anger is probably at that realization of the reality. And she's showing, she's a boomerang. Any clinging tendencies other than what we're seeing right here, where she just gets so upset about it? She's starting to face that she is doing things she doesn't really want to do. Yet it's too early for there to be a way out, though. It's been 2 years. Sorry, that's just not long enough for her to really be at a turnaround where she's like, okay, now I'm going to go into liminality. There's going to be more cycling. There's going to be more anger. She's going to double down on this and dig deeper in for a while. That is what I would expect to continue for a while. Let me look and see if there's anything more. Now, what about your daughter? She has been unhappy since the 9-year-old was born. There could be a few things going on there. Could be some of that could be revisionist history, which is what MLCers do. They rewrite our history. Did she have any postpartum? I asked not knowing a thing about it because remember, though I have 5 kids, they're all adopted. So I haven't been through that part of it. No experience, but that can be such a big deal. And the other thing is, as I was thinking about this question, what do we think? Having children is a huge change and transition in a marriage/relationship. There's this side of it, and that's how we can mark. I mark my relationship as pre-MLC and post-MLC. For some reason, I don't even go pre-kids, before kids, and after kids. It's pre-MLC. And that is a big dividing line in my marriage. Many, it's kids. And oftentimes, kids come right away. So you have a year and a half of being married, and then there are kids. But everything changes. And then you feel guilty because, well, I want to be a mom. And I love being a mom. But the relationship struggles and changes that are in my spouse and me, I didn't know that was going to happen. And we don't know that, and so that we get disappointed. And so she's been unhappy since your 9-year-old was born. Doesn't have to mean anything about the kids. It could mean the changes that are normal. We don't know these are normal. The changes that came along in your relationship, in the husband-wife relationship. Not that either of you did anything wrong. They're perfectly normal changes. But when we don't expect them, because we have this fairy tale idea of worlds, and that, oh, you're supposed to be so happy. And maybe you really are. You're holding this beautiful baby. But the roles have changed. Now, suddenly, there's the hormones that a woman is going through. And there's the late night feedings. the first year with my boys, I had 3 kids. We got a toddler and 2 infants, and I had some extreme. I had a disc problem in my back, and I had extreme nerve pain. And I was cycling through various medications. I had to step up on them, and at night, my leg would just go dead, and I had to get up several times to get bottles. And Chuck had to get up around 2 a.m. So I didn't even ask him. So I wasn't feeling resentful of him. What I wanted more though was I would have liked it if he'd acknowledged the challenges that I was experiencing, having to get up at 2 a.m. and not even trying to bother him. But I had to crawl downstairs because I had a leg that wouldn't work. And by the time I got there, I might have been able to sort of stand to get to the fridge and drag my leg behind me with just limping, but it was a very dragging. Now, it would eventually wake up. So the daytime people at church probably didn't even notice. I'm holding 2 babies, and it was a struggle, but they didn't even know I had a problem. And I had surgery later. That's a situation where, yeah, the roles changed. And suddenly I have a medical problem, but I'm having to take care of 2 babies here. And then I've got a little toddler, and I've got a spouse who's, has to sleep so he can get up for work. And the roles were there. I'd been the main breadwinner for quite a few years. And now I'm staying at home, and he's doing that side. I can see how somebody can become unhappy. And then the other person who doesn't realize is, what? You wanted this. Don't you love our children? Well, it's not really about that. Now, I don't know what's going on with her in that, and if it's a revisionist or if there are some valid feelings that she is recalling. The other thing I want you to think about is that why do we have revisionist history? Because when we are feeling negative and depressed and hopeless, what memories make the most sense to us? The memories that match those feelings. Because feelings that are positive, of glowing and all this, they're not real. We can't get ourselves to there. So we can either turn and create and place our personal interpretation that is now, and we interpret everything negatively now, onto that past. Or we can bring up and inflate feelings of negativity, hopelessness, despair, or just anything it could be a scintilla. Instead of saying a scintilla because that's light, a tiny shred of shadow, and we expand it in our memory. And we just blow that out of proportion. It might have been a flash of irritation at something, and now it's everything, even though it was momentary when she was born. Because that's where her mindset is now, and as a depressed person, we are magnetic for those depressed and hopeless memories or ideas, and we will turn them that way. So I hope this can help with some ideas of what might be going on with her. And let's move on to number 4. Let's look. I'm going to check and see. I don't think we've had, and I don't know if people are not out there today, because I saw a lot of activity right before in the group. So if you're there, you can just let me know you're there. And I was really excited that we seem to have a lot of new people who are asking some really great questions on the Facebook page. So make sure to keep getting involved, because I really loved seeing the new questions. Hi there. Oh, I've missed you. I think I was referencing somebody to you the other day. Let me know if you heard from them. I have to go look and see who it was. But so that might take time. But and thank you for confirming that you're there. Okay, so let's go on to number 4. We have another anonymous female MS here. Bomb drop was May of 2018 and marriage 1995. She has a clinging boomerang who is a low energy wallower. My husband has made some progress in his midlife crisis journey over the past 4 years. I actually thought we were entering the withdrawal stage, and perhaps we are. He's still not emotionally ready to come home, though. To come home, although, and there's a typo in here. It says, I think this is supposed to say he's not emotionally ready to come home, although he thinks he is, but it says he is instead of he thinks he is. So not sure. I'm just putting the word thinks in there because that makes sense contextually. He's become quite the workaholic and seems to be even more involved with work than he ever has been before. He'll work 7 days a week and is actually opening up a new office, which will just require more work yet. He'll call once a day, maybe once every couple of days now. It used to be up until a few months ago he called a couple times a day and wanted to see me once a week at least. Now it seems that he calls just to touch base and check in to keep me hanging on. Instead of saying, and there's that idea, when we look at it as to keep me hanging on, we're looking at it from the negative point of there's a manipulation. He just wants to keep stringing me around. He really doesn't share much. He just says hi. But really it is to touch base. He is still trying to be reassuring, and he doesn't. That he's giving what he can. Let's put it that way. He's always used work as an avoidance when he didn't want to deal with problems, and I think he's so entrenched in work that it's keeping him from thinking about anything but work. Is this expected? Is this part of the process? Yeah. And when I say that, I don't want everybody listening to go, okay, mine's going to be a workaholic. Each person has their method of avoidance. And so we know that in this case, his pattern of avoidance is he hides out with work. So for him, this method of avoidance is what's normal and part of the process. Because what's normal and expected within this is that they will avoid. Escape and avoid, remember? And he'll just keep doing it. And some people will keep doing it forever. Sorry. But that doesn't mean yours is one. He's still within normal realms of timeline. Yeah, it's been a long time. And yeah, some of them, it can be at a point where we can see, not expect, but we can see returning and rebuilding even at this point. But we can see reconnected, more touch and goes reconnections and that. And you've had some progress. This is the time where we can see them turning around, looking back toward us. It's not unexpected, but it doesn't mean yours is late to the game. Because MLC, remember, 3 to upwards of 7 years. And you're at 4. It sucks. But you're right there smack in the middle of normalcy for an MLC context. And yeah, he's going to avoid. But he is doing what he can. And that you said you said hanging on, keeping you hanging on, but you also said he's calling to touch base. And I think in this context, those are opposite ideas. To touch base is a reassurance. I just wanted to let you know, touch base. I want to let you know I'm there. It's okay. Okay, no one reached out to you. I'll look back. I think it was from a coaching call the other day. Oh, yes. I know who it is. Okay. Maybe I'll email you. Okay. Or I'll PM you afterwards and tell you exactly who. And then, because then you can get in contact and I'll tell you why. Okay. So what you're going through is normal. And in fact, I think I have the next question is, we've had a few, in fact, haven't we, about being at that point in the timeline where we've had some returns or some attempts and some fails, and then they're going back again. And the next one that I'm going to talk about is about that same issue. So what did we have? That's our third one out of 5 submissions. You're going through the normal, and your job is to just step back, let him give what he can give right now. And that means that if you have needs, and I'm not talking sexual, I'm just talking general. I mean, if that's one of them, whatever. But I'm just talking when you can't get your needs met through your relationship with him. If you need, you have that loneliness, you just need to feel appreciated. Those things, he isn't capable yet. He just doesn't have the capacity yet. And that thing, and this is your writing, not something he said. You said he just needs to touch. He calls just to touch base. That touch base, touch, that's a positive. The check in, keeping me hanging on is a negative interpretation. But you had a positive side of it. He's calling you to touch base. Yeah. Does he want you to keep hanging on? Now, if he were to say, come on, just keep hanging on, that would be him saying, I really need this. Please don't give up on me. But when you said that, if you're wise, you're thinking, there's just a yo-yo and they just want to manipulate. They want the security blanket. It's not untrue. But what is the root of that? He's trying to reassure you. He's making an effort. And you said he calls a couple times a day was what he did in the past. And now it's down to more like once a day, maybe sometimes not once a day, but often once a day. That's pretty frequent. The challenge that we're dealing with in your situation is that it is declined because you had one that called multiple times a day. So what I want you to do with it is I want you to take the blessing of the space that you're getting from not having to deal with sometimes what can be anxiety of multiple calls a day from somebody who isn't ready and who is still in a crisis. And embrace and fill up that space that has been given to you by his absence and when he has backed off of calling you so frequently. In this, if you're not an introvert, it's a lot harder, I think. When Chuck left, each time, there was such a relief. For one thing, remember, I don't want my husband leaving and going somewhere, but these times when he would leave would be energizing and ramping up. So you're going, I just need space for a few weeks you could feel the energy and he was taunting and teasing and he was increasing monster at me. And so he'd leave. It wasn't like he came home and it was good and then you leave. Then you're more distraught. But when he'd leave, I was like, okay, just breathe, take a breather. I can do it. And so I want you to take that time. Recognize the gift in those spaces of time where you aren't in communication with him and take advantage of them. Okay, we're going to go on to our last one. And we talked earlier, but I am going to go over because there's some other questions. Plus, if I don't get to it, there's a completely separate question of this one that had nothing to do with the other questions. She submitted later. But we have Wendy. Wendy's bomb drop was June of 2020, and date of marriage is 1994. She has a clinging boomerang and a high-energy replayer. She says, things are going great, but I still feel reserved. And she posted some of her issues in the Facebook page just the other day as well. Is it normal for them not to want to talk about the alienator and what has all taken place? Oh, gosh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, yeah. He's talked a little bit about some things and says it bothers him what he's done and how he's hurt me and the kids. So remember how we're going to connect the logic? From his perspective, does he want to talk about things that bring up his shame and guilt? And does he want to talk about things that were so painful that when he talks about them, you can see the pain on your face? Does he want? Now, I'm not saying should he. Does he want to? He keeps going back. I mean, those just make him recoil back into more shame and guilt, don't they? He says he wants to work on our marriage, but asks that I never mention the affair or throw it in his face. He knows he effed up. Says if I can't let it go, it will never work between us. Well, okay. First, we're not done, but there's more in there. Maybe he's right about if I can't let it go, but he is defining you bringing it up as not letting it go. And you don't just have an affair and say, okay, we're done with that. I let it go. You heal. And because I can't, my hand is so clenched on not letting it go that I can't even open. Imagine when your muscles are tight because you're clenching so hard, how hard it is for you to just open. You have to heal and massage that through your healing so that you can open the clenched fist that is holding on to the pain and memory of the affair that brings it up and yeah, throws it in his face. Yeah, I agree that you shouldn't throw it in his face. Does that mean you're gonna get mad sometimes? And through the healing process, you may very well do that. It's not about being right or wrong. It's how it works sometimes. There were times where I threw it in Chuck's face, and it usually was mild, but like, yeah, well, I didn't do blah, blah, blah. And usually it was during some sort of an argument or disagreement, at least, even if it was, if it was milder. And that was a long time ago. It just got less and less and less. And remember, he's been home since 2008 when he left her October 2008. So it's been a long time. But there was a few years, definitely, where, we're healed, but it would occasionally come up in an argument, and I might just mention it. And it was being thrown in the face when it was an argument. Does it mean I should have? Does it mean I shouldn't have? Yeah, I shouldn't have done it, but I did it. And that's what we have to look at, is it was normal. Okay. So I want you to give yourself grace for it. And he has to learn that. He has to learn to give the grace. Because remember, it's about his sins. And one of the other things that sometimes I think might be a good idea, and it depends on the couple. First thing, you eventually go to therapy. And when you get therapy, and we didn't talk about this today, so I would like it if you where you're going to be seeing a counselor, if you can find somebody, ideally, who is trained in not just, I can do this too, but who has a expertise level type of specialty in emotionally focused therapy. I want somebody who is focused, who has training on healing from infidelity. Not just somebody who, I've met with couples who that and this and this. But if you can get an EFT therapist, that would be awesome. But talk to your therapist about this, would it, in the beginning at least, can you put up boundaries about, well, doesn't he understand? I need to talk about it. I need to ask these questions. I can't let it go. But you can come to a healing place where it will let go. It's not that I can't, and it's not a won't. It's I don't know how to let it go, because you're becoming more entrenched in it when you're not allowed to talk through it. Because sometimes working through it and facing the challenges and problems and sins is how we let go. Facing them. Avoiding them just buries them harder into ourselves. Just incorporates them into our trauma and adds to our PTSD. He doesn't get that. And one of the reasons he doesn't get it is because it doesn't fit the narrative he wants, the narrative of healing he wants. And that narrative of healing is, can we just forget about it now? You love me and I love you. Isn't that enough? It wasn't enough before, right? Well, when I love you, but it's not enough. Love isn't enough. So no, it's not enough. But maybe a boundary of, let's only discuss, let's set up some safe times for us to, when I can ask you questions about the affair or when we can talk about it. And one of those safe places is counseling. And so you can try and save it for that. But then what happens? Here's the other thing, though. He's not allowed to, hey, you're not allowed to talk about that outside of counseling. We have 3:00 Monday and today is Saturday. No. So it can't be that kind. And I tried this with Chuck, but it was in the beginning. And I think I was just trying to experiment with some different techniques. And that was one of them. But we weren't seeing a counselor at that point. So I said, and I think I might have read it somewhere, but it was just like this idea. So I don't know if it was on a forum where somebody else was posting. I don't know if it was in a counseling, one of those, a self-help book or not. It might have just been an advice column. I can't remember. It was because this was in the beginning in 2005. It would have been September 2005, first time he came home, and I was trying to read about how to do these. And I said, maybe we should set aside a couple days a week, a 30-minute session And during that is when we sit together, we can talk and I can ask questions. But during the other times, we need to leave that off the table. But it's on the table during this structured time. And that is set to so that the person can feel more safe that it's not going to happen at these other times. And that there is a finite period for it. We will talk from this to this, and then we're done for that period. And we can bring it up again and the next time. And if it doesn't, and if we feel too badly on it, we can say, okay, you know what, this isn't working. We're going to save this for therapy. And then we have that mediator between us, somebody who can help the person feel safe. Both of you feel safe, because he feels unsafe because you're throwing it in his face, and you feel unsafe because you were betrayed. And I don't know if that's a good recommendation or not idea. What I want is ask a counselor if that's something, because it's not going to work. You can't ever bring it up again. And then it's a way to blame you for your any reconciliation failing, because our reconciliation didn't work. She just couldn't let it go. Well, you didn't, and that's you being you plural. So I'm not trying to make it criticizing on him, but it's as a couple, the two of you didn't do the things together to facilitate a letting go. And you've got to facilitate. You've got to do the healing that can allow for a letting go. And refusing to acknowledge, to discuss the pains of the other person is going to entrench the pain, not release the pain. So let's see. Things are going great. He asked me to move in with him. I applied for jobs in the area, and I have 2 interviews scheduled now, and she has now canceled those interviews. I'm not sure that it's the right thing to do. He's afraid things won't work out. He's now not sure that it's the right thing to do. He's afraid things won't work out. He's afraid he's going to fail because he's seen his patterns. And he would have ruined my life again, and he doesn't want to hurt me like that. Is he just scared, or is he cycling back? And those are the same thing. Scared and cycling back. And so I want to talk really, we've got 2 minutes. I just want to mention what I mentioned when I spoke with Wendy before, because I think this is good. This is what Chuck and I did, is I want you to have a plan of action for him. He is looking for some reassurance. He's so afraid of his own failures and that he can't fail. He doesn't trust himself yet. And why should he? Really? Because I felt this way, like I wanted her home. And then I didn't. And this is in the past. And then I felt like, and I was so certain when I came home, or I wanted her to be here. And then I didn't. And then I went back to the alienator. And so he's looking at what he's done and going, well, I feel certain again. But look, I feel certain, but I can see, I am at a logical point where I can see that I haven't been trustworthy with what I've said. My feelings changed. I didn't want them to. I don't feel like I'm going to change, but I didn't feel like I was going to change last year when I did this, and the year before when I did this. So it's scary, isn't it? Chuck felt this way, and he verbalized it. He said, I've changed my mind 50 times in 50 minutes. So, okay, I'm assuming you're leaving. I'll PM you in a few minutes, okay? I want a plan of action. So what Chuck and I did was, we went to when he left the alienator, he got to stay at home. I went and took care of Grandma, and I came home every other weekend. So 2 days. And it wasn't every weekend, it was every other. But it was across a 9-month period before I moved home fully. And so I increased how long I stayed. So first it was 2 days. And then for a while it was 3, and then 4. I was just staying longer and longer and longer. And once it wasn't just weekends, we were able to go to counseling and see a counselor. So this is what I talked with Wendy about, and this is what I want others to think about. Her husband needs a reassurance. He needs a reassurance that we can do this together, but we can take it slow, because he's just like, I want you to move in with me. I want you to move back. They're living apart and a drivable distance, but it is a distance. And so to be together, one of them has to actually move a distance, not to the same area. So she had to apply for jobs in that area, that sort of thing. And he is going to stay there. He won't be coming back. So the person that will have to eventually move will be her. And so right now it's spend tidbits. And she said that's what they've been doing. Weekends. So now you reassure him by saying, okay, let's keep doing these weekends and we'll start to expand. And when we expand, we're going to take it really slowly. Because his was, if we're going to be together, we just need to be together. This doesn't make sense. But he's not ready for it and he backed out. So I want him to have a reassurance plan, and we talk about it with him in a reassuring way as we're going to have a plan of action for how we're going to do this. And we're going to do it slowly, but yes, we should be together. You're right. How do you reconcile when you're trying to reconcile if you're not together? Same thing I say about no contact. If you want to ever reconcile with somebody, how do you do that when you don't ever have contact with them? Now it's about that next stage. But he doesn't know he needs it slow, and then he does know he needs it slow because of his fear. So she needs to be firm about it, not go in with his ultimatums of, you move in or not and we're done. Like, no, that's not how it works. And when you say it with that voice of soft tone of reassurance. And you're right. Say, here's, I think we've been having this really good plan where I've been here at weekends, but we need to have an outline of maybe expanding that, of slow. Pretty soon we can move to not just weekends, but Mondays or Fridays, however it works. And then let's see if we can get in some counseling. And he might be getting ready for counseling or close to it, or he is ready, one of those. And when we can find a counselor who can meet on those days, the days I'm there. And if not, you could even do counseling these days. There's so much Zoom. But if you can do it the other way, then do it. So I didn't get to Wendy's last question, which is completely different. So I will try and approach that question at a later time because we are at time now. And I've got a few minutes that I am going to message Morton and then get upstairs so Chuck can get ready to go help Serenity with her running group. And I will see everybody next week. Bye-bye.